Hola! I knew we will eventually meet here at the surrendering of the soul phase. Even though this is a very intimate process and also very different for everyone, I know that we'll have something in common. We all feel extremely lonely when we go through it. Every day, I help others to reach a state of liberation by uncovering the gifts that are hidden under labels such as insecurity, trauma, grief, depression. But before being able to guide others to move from their post-traumatic stress disorder to a stage of post-traumatic growth, I had to learn how to transcend my own traumas due to verbal, emotional, and sexual abuse. This is a space where myself, Mendizabal, and others will share with you the gift of surrendering to the soul. And no need to buckle up because this trip is being guided by the spirit in La Catch.
All right. Okay. Today I have an empowerment coach for multidimensional women. Of course, Michelle is here with us today because I think I'm starting to feel that. I think I'm starting to feel that I'm a multidimensional woman and I'm starting to take it seriously. And nothing is a coincidence. So it happens that actually Michelle was booked to do this podcast with us today. And before going further with Michelle, I want you to hear how she heals. All right. I don't think we have to to go farther than
Podcast is over. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, the episode is over. Keep singing. That was a short trip. I have to say, I went right deep in so fast, and then remembering, hey, multidimensional woman, Jen, multidimensional woman, come back.
It's beautiful. Good.
How are you today? How are you feeling? I didn't ask you that at the beginning.
I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful. I did an insight timer meditation this morning on Fridays. I usually do insight timer meditations, and that's why I was saying I'm kind of in my workshop, my little studio that I have here. So if we wanted to sing, it's totally appropriate. And I always feel really good when I work with that community because not only my guides and my angels who I have the privilege of working with, my soul team, but I've created a community of Insight Timer has really good energy, so it's different than Instagram. So people on Insight Timer are specifically coming to meditate and feel an embodied experience of that transmission energy. There's a purity there. I love my Instagram community as well, but less people there are in the same multidimensional, we're using that word a lot, like frequency. So those people are really, 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 like it's not... So a challenge I've had, like a little roadblock in my work is that I start, and I'm a Scorpio, and it's just it's so me, but I start like in the deep end, and so I've had to kind of work backwards to be able to break down things. So today in the transmission, which is on if people want to know, I'm Michelle Infinity on Instagram, and I did a hour-long transmission that's up there today that's about grounding. And I broke down, because some people don't actually know how to feel their root chakra, how to anchor it into the earth, drawing up energy from the earth, receiving. Like there are things that we come up across, like in that whole multidimensional consciousness. And then with my clients, some of them, like you are even just illustrating right now, is like we're conditioned in the ways of the world, which is the physical world that we're taught in school, the politics and the social roles, all of this to create a society, right? And then when we go into spirituality, right now is a tricky thing because spirituality can be like, let's say the Instagram version of spirituality where like people are talking, like doing reels about meditation. It's a little publicized and a little commercialized in that space. Yeah. But when a person's soul and heart is truly ripe, mature at a place where they really actually do are ready to acknowledge, like the fear is not there, or the fear might still be there, but it's less. This huge other realm of invisible beings and like forces, archetypal forces and energies. Even for me, because I'm a logical person, I'm not like, I know I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, but I'll just wrap it up after this. Like a long time ago, I was working with a shaman deeply with ayahuasca, and he told me I was a channeler. And this is, let's say, in the last 10 years, but like 8 years ago, probably. And I didn't quite get it in a way. Mm-hmm. And then when I saw channelers, like they usually channel a guide or they give a name to the team of people, or they're like doing, and some of it feels true and some of it feels a little strange, to be honest with you. And the reason for that is because there is an astral realm with higher and lower dimensional or beings, like that have physical body, don't have physical bodies. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to just be a channeler to just, average Joe person. And I think some people do open themselves up to like energies that may not be the best cohesive thing. So there's a large range, just like with people, right? There's a large range of people you would want to be friends with and people you don't want to be friends with. And it's the same in the invisible world. And that can create a lot of fear for people when they don't know how to protect themselves and have boundaries. So because my mother, who is super new age, but very, very practical, very grounded woman, you know, like there's a whole conversation of who you are when you're a multidimensional or channeler that like it gets a little woo-woo, it gets a little off of like the real world. And there's a beautiful gift when those two realities actually come together and are congruent, and you can really actually be a woman who is aware that there's a spiritual guidance system that once we tap into and when we surrender to, which is the name of my biggest program, when we surrender to the forces, the same force that breathes us, that makes our heart beat, the life force that some people call God, but it's really the force of life that moves through all things. When we attune to that and we trust that more than we trust that commercial reality that says you're not enough, you need to buy more, you need to look for the next big thing, you need to achieve more, never be happy with what you have, always like the disease of more. This is a human construct in our society that totally disconnects us from our true sense of power, which comes from humility and service and love and altruism, like giving without receiving back.
And trusting in the union.
Exactly. And so that's what spirituality actually invites us into. But in order to do that, we must release the conditioning of that programming from the world that we see. And that is a big leap for a lot of people. So, you know, there's an avoidance there. But when a soul is ready for that, that's where I'm a good bridge walker. I am allowed to I hold a space in the earth, but also in the heavens, in the sky, and allowing people to come across and be like, yes, open to this realm that you don't quite understand. I don't understand it, and I teach it. You know, like I'm so grateful. I am so grateful for what comes through me in these spaces. And I'm constantly learning and constantly being humbled by it myself. I mean, it's amazing. And that's why I feel like healers need healers and we need teachers and coaches. I know that I'm a way shower through my learning, through my embodiment, through my own work on this path. And then I get to turn around and say, you know, these things that I'm learning myself.
Yeah. Exactly how you say it. It's very intimidating when we start going through that process of, I call it self-liberation throughout self-discovery. But really, it all comes to surrender to the soul. It all comes that being okay with not knowing, being okay with being taken care of, right? And in the way it's needed. Because we never really know what we actually need fully, right? And we always want to plan ahead and we always want to protect ourselves with what is coming. But we don't know what's going to happen after we finish this episode, right? Like that's exactly how you enter in this unified, we can call it multidimensional existence. You know, where everything is in one way. And that's the purpose of this podcast, because I felt myself very, very lost and intimidated by that process for a long time. I feel like the call was coming through me since I was a child. It was constantly coming, and I was constantly refusing it, grieving it, thinking I was just because I was missing the people that they were passing out in my life, like they were, and I didn't really accept it that they were actually them trying to contact me, right? It just made me feel like, I shouldn't be having dreams about them anymore. I shouldn't be thinking about them anymore. No, I wasn't thinking about them. I was feeling them.
Wow.
They were reaching out to me, you know, and I was constantly putting a pause to it. And I don't think there's nothing wrong about that. I think it was just, it turned out to be perfect because you cannot be ready before you're meant to be ready, right? And that when I look back, and I can see why I'm that walker, for bridges too, and that connector. I call it connector for others, to understand all those little moments that they feel intimidating by a conversation, by a dream, by an experience that they don't understand, and they rather not even think about it anymore, and that's why I call this first season of the podcast the missing piece, because I was always missing piece. I was always looking for a missing piece, but I wasn't allowing myself to feel what it was already there for me. I was always thinking that I had to reach out to something externally, and it was already given to me. All the answers were there in my dreams, in my feeling, in what I was experimenting, like when I was thinking about someone that passed away and I could feel their hugging and I hear their voices. I was like, I'm going crazy. I need to get over this. It's just me that I'm obsessed. No, I wasn't. And that trained me, and that was like, that I always see as the training of life, for my purpose. And now I see myself doing this podcast, Surrendering to the Soul, and I have to ask you, were you looking for a missing piece?
Yeah, can I answer that in 1 second? I want to comment on some things that you said. The hugging dreams from someone who passes, because I know this is people who are listening are gonna be like, oh, that happened to me too. I've had 2 of those, I think, where it's like you're infused with spirit, and it's so real. That is really beautiful, that crossing of the bridge where this happened to me recently. I had a big epiphany from a lesson that was 2 years. That could be a missing piece story. I'll get into that in a moment. But everything that you said about like what you're looking for is already within you. I mean, that's like in all of the Hindu text, all of the really old like religious scriptures kind of. I think Jesus also, it's like, it's the same kind of truth, right? That medicine. And that's what I'm saying about the programming of the culture. And you just described it so beautifully because of the dream. You were having these gorgeous, expanded, open wing, like touched by an angel from the other side moments, and your brain is so connected to the culture that tells you it's not real, that you discounted these really, I mean, I'm glad that you don't have that now, but the first impulse is to write off the most true, because just like the Hindu scriptures say, like, this world is illusion. That's the weird paradox duplicity, is that the physical world that we're all like seeing is the game, is the dance, is the Rasa Leela, is the like divine play of form. But actually we're really energetic beings, and pieces of our soul is like light and information and feeling and emotion and personality, but beingness and intention and voltage, like that's what we are. And I believe our souls, like I can see that there's some of me in my Michelle physical being, and I can sense that there's most of me is way big and is in another dimension. And I have access to parts of it. And as I grow, and as my spirit guide team decides, which I kind of like wrestle with them, I'm not a brat, but I'm definitely a rebel. And it's cute because I teach spirituality, and I teach faith, and I teach trust. But we're both probably, my nationalities are Armenian, Brazilian, Russian, Italian. And so I'm just mouthing.
From the Latin background, yeah.
Right, exactly. And you're Venezuelan, so we're just mouthing in different ways.
It's a negotiation. It's like, no, I'm not doing it. Yes, you are. No,
right,
I'm not.
Right. And the submit to something, to surrender to the soul, to surrender to something more, right? And so to surrender to the infinite, and they do know more than we do. And we also, in this physical form, have the ego. So it's said that the soul incarnates with 2 intentions. One of them is to return to source, so the intention for oneness, and then the intention to liberate and to go through lessons that make you an individual. Like that's what happens when we come into human form. So having that push pull, like, oh, I want to surrender to the divine, but I also want to like be a businesswoman and come into, you know, and that was, I would say, my missing piece for me. The thing that I'm looking for outside myself is this anchor into the world, quote unquote, which is ironic, right? So what's really fun, I'll tell you about so when you build a coaching practice, you have an idea and then it gets revealed to you with the patterns of who comes to you so I end up working with healers or women who are healers or multidimensional women, right? I say multidimensional women, but they're all like pros at the world. They had a nursing career for this long. They had this, they did this, they built this enterprises. One of my clients had $1 million business, but they don't know yet how to do what I do very naturally, which is like this ceremonial space. Like I understand like intrinsically, but also it is intrinsically, and it's something that has grown because when I first started teaching workshops in like 2012, 2013, I didn't know how to hold space. I was a yoga teacher and it was really beautiful to watch things coming through me in the yoga room, and people would cry and be like, oh my God, you just brought me back to my breath. And it was really cool. So the multidimensional gifts that I had were present. But inside my head, in plenty of those classes where people would come up to me and cry afterwards, I was beating myself up. And I was like, I don't feel it. I don't feel connected. And there are times when I teach, and it took me 10 years, like legit, 8 years before all of a sudden, like I want to say like the warrior queen or this maturity came into my being and was like, I know how to heal through space holding. I know how to hold a workshop. I know how to do this. I know how to do this. It was just like a trust. That trust took years of me cultivating. And now the women who come to me for coaching and even a man, I just got off the phone with a man who wants to do the same thing, who wants to really allow himself to embody the role of healer and teacher in the world. Yeah. And so for me, businesswoman, embodying the role of businesswoman, it works, but it's not, that world is a different I'm learning to do something now. I think we were talking about this before the things started rolling. We're talking about the difference between the archetypes of motherhood and priestess. And I thought on the inside, what if we combine those? How can we integrate them so they're not separate? When you said that to me, I was like, oh, I would love, and I wonder for myself when I step into the role of motherhood in this lifetime, for me, I wonder if I will be able to, because it's my deepest prayer that those roles can be integrated. And right now I'm in a conversation, and the way I get tripped up through my ego, that was the 2-year lesson that I was talking about, is that I see a lot of people who have really mastered that superficial way of doing business that works for the world and like really build their businesses, their brands. I'm making $1 million, You know, that's like the trend right now. 7-figure income is like, I can teach you in a second how to do that, right? And I'm not, I hope that I get to do that. And I really do. I really am like, I would love to see that kind of an enterprise in my work. And I know that can't be the mission statement of my work. Does that make sense? Like my attunement is, it can't be material. And I just talked about this on my Instagram. It will be
just a result. It will be a result. You know, exactly. It will be a consequence of your alignment, but
exactly,
it cannot be your mission. Yeah, no, totally not.
Exactly.
No. It's not gonna work.
Exactly.
It's not gonna work because you're not. It's not gonna be driven, right? It happens to me constantly. If I don't have the passion for it, it's just you get the money and you're like, so what? What's next? You know, and it's constantly looking for something external, that looking into the void. because it's more, you are creating more void.
And comparison. So comparing, so where I lose power, or where like looking for missing pieces, right? Is like, I'm like, well, I want to be a professional badass. Like I want to be, but then my girlfriend just told me yesterday, like, do you really want to be a CEO? And I was like, no, not really. Actually, I want to be a medicine woman. And I want, and just feeling those things. So it's an interesting thing. So missing piece also has to do with, I think for women, because I'm trying to like hone in on what would be valuable for those who are listening to this to receive. And I think that women that have the same energetic signature as I do, is the missing piece that we're looking for is that inner cultivation to trust our inner wisdom and our authority, and feel worthy of bringing a tone to the world. So the conversation that we just spoke to about like make 7K and do all these things, and that is celebrated in our culture, because money is celebrated in our culture, and wealth and business and all those things are celebrated. But how do we bring reverence and sacrifice or humility and empowerment? How do we be a stand for connection to the invisible world? How do we be in our power in prayer? I think that's my exaltation, that's my medicine, and that has to do with our journey into our heart space. And so I remember, oh God, what year was it? 2014 or 2015, I was in Fort Lauderdale and I did an ayahuasca ceremony, and I went to my mom's house afterwards, and it was so loud, but I sat at a table. I don't know if my mom was there or not. And I was like meditating, and I felt my guides and everyone around me like in a big circle. And they shouted, "You already are. You're doing it right." And I think the missing piece that I was looking for so long is not the acknowledgement from my guides, not the acknowledgement from the outside world, but the acknowledgement from in my heart to myself that I was doing it right, that I knew what I was talking about, because I'm a disruptor, because I represent something in the face of a different culture. And how do I be attuned to this multidimensional consciousness of universal love, like we call it Christ consciousness, but really, truly the wisdom that and love that is threaded throughout all religion. And it's now we live in a culture where you can't like appropriate, you're not allowed to talk about unity. You only can talk about divisiveness and division. I don't believe that. I want to be a bridge for weaving that love into our culture. That's the frequency that we're missing. So anyway, I get all fired up about that. My missing piece was self-acknowledgement. The thing that I was looking for, like and even still, this is something that I really like. My friends are like, "Why don't you just celebrate what you just accomplished?" You know, I think I'm the hardest on myself, and I feel that the women who I serve and the women who are healers, like really good women, are the ones who second guess if what they're about to say at the meeting is the thing. It's not somebody, it's the people who are the loudest voices are the people who have the biggest egos. The women who are the most humble are the ones who actually possess true power. That's what I've seen. So,
It's hard to find that balance to trust. And I've seen it too. I have an amazing spiritual coaches that they doubt themselves as well. And I believe that one of the most powerful things that they taught me is by them not trusting themselves. It was a reflection for me, like, you need to trust. I need to trust. And when I'm in that frequency from my heart, right? And I know my ego is there because I can hear it and I can see it. I don't fight it anymore. Since you are touching into this, and actually I just hosted a little very private workshop called Liberating the Voice of Your Heart. Very cheesy name, but it's exactly what I'm going through, and knowing that my ego voice is there and I embrace it. It's not. I don't I don't fight it anymore. It's part of the board. It's part of the team, you know,
Totally.
and I say that I feed it to you. It's like, that will make you happy. Okay, we already heard you. You know, we're gonna give you that. We're gonna give you that. So now let us work. You know what I mean? And then everything, and it's alignment, because it's part of who I am too. You know, the moment I ignore it, I go back to the void, right? I go back to the missing piece, because it's like looking inside, and that is part of who I am, right? And sometimes now I used to wear big earrings and a lot of bracelets, but I have, like 2 years ago, everything disappeared magically. I was sleeping and the earrings will disappear, they will get lost, everything, and I gave up. It's like, I don't need more metal, I don't need more crystals, whatever I was wearing, not even rocks, nothing. Like, it's just like nothing. And I don't wear anymore. But that doesn't, for a moment, I stopped putting makeup, I stopped doing my hair, you know, my clothing, and everything was just like, oh, I'm a spirit, who cares about the, who cares?
Wow.
You know, when I went to alignment, I felt like, you know what, like, for the ego feel a lot, for the part of the ego as a woman, as the feminine, to embrace it. It came as a result. It was a result for me whenever I, you know, and I don't put much makeup, but whenever I put mascara and I do a little bit of my hair and just, you know, put a nicer top that is not a pajama, that moment, it's a little bit of grounding time for as well. You know, it could be like the ceremony for others. It's like, okay, now I'm into the world. Now I'm gonna serve in a different way, and it's part of who, you know, there's a call for everyone, right? And some women are being called to maybe go more, how can I say this, but separate a little bit more from their ego, maybe, yes. And some women may have the call to embrace it all. And I feel like I'm having that call to embrace it, the whole package, the whole being, and with having my heart as a center.
Exactly.
Yes, I find what you're saying. I see a lot of women and men that they're more pure, and I can see it. I can see their purity, you know, like they're more connected into their higher self. But I truly don't feel like that's my call at this moment. You know, for me, the call is to be center in my heart. I know how to tap in if I need to. If it's not like I can control it, it comes naturally. When I need to do it, it will just happen. Like we were talking before on camera, right? Like what I was sharing to you. And my ego, whenever I need to hear my ego, well, it's gonna be too loud that I won't have any option to hear it, but to hear it and to say, okay, yes, I heard you. I'm gonna take care of you. Yes, we're gonna do that. We're gonna have some fun. We're gonna dance. We're gonna do whatever you need to get done. Like, yeah, we're gonna have some time off in the mountain, but right now, we are gonna work on this first, and then everything combines together. Because
I want to say something about that, because that's really beautiful about you were saying about like your role in the world, and what's being called of you is to be both. And I like that, because that's truly, not every woman is meant to hold a frequency of like medicine woman. It doesn't mean that she doesn't have that inside of her, but maybe your outer role is not to wear that. Whereas mine kind of always, that has always been. And that's why I talk about that balance of like, for me, embodying the role of like masterful, like imagine I was running a team. Like that's something in my business that could be like another level if I had a team in that. So that would be me growing in that way, that direction that like makes me more business-like in the world. But I'm really, really, really profound at holding space and ceremony, at doing sound healings and doing these things, you know, so, and keeping it simple. And I don't, like when my girlfriend said, do you want to be a CEO? And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And so for me, like, but that's what also I feel is good and makes me a good healer, is that this is my domain. And then other people come to me, which, I mean, God, I have past life memories. I've been in this kind of shaman style role for many a lineage, you know, and everybody gets to play with different degrees of what their true dharma is. So my dharma is to be a spiritual teacher, and that just is true. And it took me, I don't think I ever used to say spiritual teacher, those words, until like a year ago, because it was a big part of my, I don't like the word hiding. I don't think I was hiding in 2015. People say that, like, you know, you're unapologetic, or you're hiding, or you're doing this, or you're doing that. I think I was cautious, because those words are very charged. You know, there's a lot of spiritual teachers who fall from grace because they're humans who have things that, like, they don't do the right thing all the time, you know? And so if you're claiming a certain status in that way, you have to be really like 100% on your game in order to do that. So I think, but now I think I've acknowledged at least, and it's deeply because of seeing the transformations in the women who I work with, and being like, oh, I am teaching spirituality, I'm teaching different tools, and I am an embodiment of a spiritual teacher, deeply in service to spirit in this world. And then other beings get to choose. You know, it's not an easy road also to be in that archetype. It's like, it's not all rainbows, butterflies, and it's definitely not like, you know, nothing's guaranteed, like you were saying before. So, yeah, it's a funny, I have a dear friend of mine, he's a therapist, but he's a very old soul. And I was making a goofy joke with him about, like, I was like, why would we tell people to come on this path? Cause we were kind of like having like a little, we're having like a little powwow about like the integrity that we have to walk, kind of non-negotiably, and how much easier it is to be a different type. I was like, he goes, yeah, it's a hard sell, isn't it? It's a hard sell.
It is easier to lie to yourself, you know, but that's what it is, right? When you are into the illusion that you can control, you're basically lying to yourself. You can control that, oh, I'm not going to show this to someone so no one can notice that I'm not honest, or that I'm not, right, you know, I'm not being a great professor, a great coach, or whatever, whoever, you know, you want to be. But the truth is, you know, the truth. You know, and the truth is, we're not perfect, and we're keeping evolving. And I think I have found a lot of, I'm not going to say the word perfectionist, but I have found a lot of lightness, like a balance in just realizing what it is and own it. And it's the truth, and I'm learning, and this is who I am right now. Maybe
that's what's
later,
good, to honor your humanity. You're honoring your humanity. That's so empowering. That's so
releasing, liberating. It's liberating, because I'm having this body right now. It's an illusion. I'm projecting it, but I'm projecting it for a reason, right?
Totally.
Because I need to learn how to handle it, right? And the moment I ignore it, that's the moment I get out of alignment. So the moment I own it, that's the moment it's like, okay, I can own my spirituality as well, because it's who I am regardless. It's like, it's not going anywhere. It's not something like, oh, I am into spirituality, like you're saying, like that modality, which is like, yeah, we're all spirits. So you are not into spirituality. You already are. So you are just realizing it, that you
already are. That's the message.
A part of you already have to take care of, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, owning whatever it is, because we're learning, and like you're saying, we have been around for a long time, and we keep evolving in different directions constantly.
Totally.
Constantly. Okay, so let's go back to your missing piece. So that was your missing piece. That's how you felt that, you know, like it was, and did you find it? Do you feel like you find it?
In certain realms, 100%, and in other realms, I'm growing. So let me give you an analogy that I give to some of my clients. So, when I first started coaching, I first started in 2018, and then in 2020, my business like actually really anchored itself, and but I started doing coaching with the voice around 2018, and then eventually, so all my branding was like vocal empowerment coach. And it's so funny, man. I try to get away from this. on a certain level because I'm really a spiritual mentor. Like I'm really good at, like I told you, the bridge thing, but you can't brand like I walk you across the. It's like challenging to give people takeaways from the So and then just today, and like it's amazing how needed the voice representing the power and what that means to
the
women.
Connection,
and how our voice attunes us energetically and really recalibrates the chakra system and the central nervous system, the vagus nerve. So there's a lot of healing that happens through the voice. One of my mentors is Suzanne Sterling, and this is a big part of her priestess work too. She does a program called Voice of Change, and so this is like it's coming up again, and I might actually do a workshop in the next month. That's like a 4-week easy. Well, it's easy for me to teach because it's so the basics of it's like the foundational principles of the big stuff. And it's such a, like, even as I'm saying this out loud, because I spoke to it, I said, I'm really good at the big astral dimensions, and me breaking things down into simplicity is my challenge. Just like I was saying, like, I'm a really good healer, and me bringing that into a business construct is like a that's like, these are the challenges that I face. But what I'm noticing, and I've seen this in other teachers that I admire, like Sean Korn, they just break down the basics over and over again. They make a career of breaking down the basics. And I'm always like, why do people do that? Why don't they want to go up high and do all the advanced stuff? And it's amazing. It's because we forget people need those basic principles over and over again. So one of the things that I say when somebody's just finding their voice and their power, or even before they have a connection, they've still got a lot of fear, past life trauma. Maybe they've experienced trauma in this life. If I speak up, I'm afraid. Some of my clients have had sexual trauma. And when somebody crosses that boundary in a family, then they say, don't tell anybody. And that can be a wound that we have to unwire for them to actually be able to be like, okay, it's safe for me to speak. I mean, there's so many different things that can happen that disconnect us from the power of our voice. And so when you're asking me, like, have I found that in the missing piece? I tell my clients that these our comfort, how do I want to say this? Our ability to hold an energy, just like wealth, or just like the number of people who come to a workshop, it eventually grows. So you can take somebody who's comfortable in one situation, and that's a big part about how I work with somebody, is to see, well, where are you able to express yourself? What relationships feel free to you? Who do you have that's a friend that you can't actually articulate yourself with? One of my first clients was this man who worked in tech, and he would get so nervous at office meetings. He would be fine in his family and at home, but if it went for his ideas in a meeting, he would have like a trauma response and shake and start to shut down, right?
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
And so, so we worked on these things to kind of gradually expand. And then the meeting was good and the meeting was okay. And so in different environments, so like you're asking me, like, do I feel my spiritual authority on this podcast with you? I feel completely in my truth. I feel completely comfortable. Maybe if you were a little bit antagonistic, or a very linear, like, I need proof that, like, maybe if there was a different energy tone in you, maybe that would trigger something in me where I'm like, oh God, this feels like all the other people who have challenged me in my life. And then my ability to, or maybe you'd be doing that and I'd still be able to be like, love, okay, I see what you're doing. That actually happened. I teach students, and I had a woman who was like that, where she was like, really? And I found, just, this is like really new information for me, but I found that the people who are like that, who are really, really challenging, are actually deeply afraid of something. And so I've been able to, like, a keto two people that I've had in my space, because I teach art online, so I do my spiritual work, and I also have I've been doing design, graphic art, and that since I was in my 20s. I went to college, and that's when I ended up in, and then I just keep this teaching gig because why not, right?
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. It's also fascinating. There's a part of me that loves it because it's just such a different people who come into my path who I'm giving mentorship and leadership that I would never meet, and so a little bit of it is social. It's fascinating work. So this person was very challenging, and I was able to shift them, and she literally had a nervous system response because I was telling her to be creative and to play. And she was like, oh my God, I don't even know how to do that because you're telling me to do something where there's no rules, and all I know how to do is do things in the boxes. My whole life I was told to only do it this way, and now you're telling me to not do that, and it's bringing up emotion in me. So anyway, that's to say, to finish your story, is to say there are some realms where we feel really confident, and there are other realms where not that we lack the confidence, but we haven't quite been able to digest or metabolize what that frequency is. And I think a big grace of my particular body of work is that I use the words anchor a lot. We anchor into surrender. So we anchor into that force that wants to move through us. This is kind of advanced though, because in order to do that, in order to really be open to surrender, those programs of fear, like I was talking about with the challenges and the shaky and the nervous system, basically telling you that your survival is at stake, that has to be transmuted so that we can become conduits of healing in this world. We remove the programming that has been imprinted on us so that we are clear. And then hopefully we can build the body, the being, the nervous system to encounter, and hopefully not through, how do I say this? Teach through our being, teach through love. I don't need to force you to believe what I believe. I can just be as I am and anchored into that truth in my heart. And the other person can meet that. And then that's enough. Yeah. So there's not force. There's not oppression. There's not power dynamics. We're just radiating love, and our being is enough. And getting women and myself always to trust that our being is enough in any circumstance. I'm trying to think of a place where I would be if I was asked to do a TED Talk, that would be a place where my nerves would come in and be oh my God. And that is also a place I can see it now in my mind's eye, anchoring into my heart and doing what I did with the sound bowl for the audience of the TED Talk, being able to hold that space in my consciousness. What a gift that would be. And if I can think of that as that's the other thing.
That's a gift.
Shifting our brain. So if I can offer from a place of they call it service, but really praise and prayer, has such a cool giving, generous transmission to it, that it makes it less about the person doing the thing and more about the thing itself. And that's a huge confidence builder.
Yeah.
Because, you're not so focused on your performance. You trust these invisible forces. You get out of the way, as they say, and you allow it to work through your being. And then some of that, because when we think of a missing piece, we think I'm not enough for XYZ, whatever it is. I is not there when we're talking about being of service and transmitting energy. We're my heart will do the thing. And I don't even know sometimes why or who's going to see it or whatever, but we're doing it anyway because we're called. I'm clear here in my heart. And then I give that out to the world. And then I'm not attached to the results of those things. That's the big one. Yeah.
to complement this, to back you up into this story, maybe seeing it from another perspective, right? From my view. Because I see myself, like you're saying, as a coach, I see a pattern, and a lot of people that I see is they need to work the blockage in their heart, right? I see that some people are very into their higher chakras, working into their higher chakras, but they reject their lower chakras. They reject being here, right? And the opposite, right? Like that was actually my case. So I was very grounded into the matter, into the illusion of my ego. And then I was rejecting my higher self. So I found that the common factor, like in the people that come to my practices, is that they have that. They, we work in the heart, as I work it too, because it's a reflection of the things I'm ready to transcend as well. And I find a lot of them sometimes telling me, but the instructions weren't clear. Like, I don't, like, what do you mean? It's like, exactly. Do you think your heart is going to give you unfold, all the instructions at once? Because it's not going to happen.
Wow, totally true. That's totally true.
It's not going to happen. And I laugh because I find myself laughing too. It's like, I need more instructions. And I
totally also do the same thing.
It's like, no, do it. Do this, and then and then it will come the other instruction. You're like, okay, surrendering, right? And trusting.
So frustrating to take
it's so frustrating. And then you look back and you're like, got it. All the sooner when you got it is that sense of liberation, transcendence. And it's just like, wow, I'm so whole. I'm so whole and hold into this space of, how do we call this? Divineness or multidimensionality, right?
Spiritual guidance, yeah. Like that really, like that's what I said. Like, last weekend I was like touched by an angel. Like a big question I had got answered, and got answered in a way where one of my guides, his name is Phoenix, like it was so, he put his stamp on it, if that makes sense. Like there was a certain symbols that came in a sequence that I was like, oh my God, you just totally did that. And they're all the time. But yeah, we as anybody, spiritual ego, not spiritual ego, I'm sorry, spiritual aspirants, we have our ego part. And we fight with not only our own higher self, but like real guidance. We fight with guidance sometimes. I was told like 2 weeks ago now, it's like been, but I tried to make that, I was told to post that I wanted to do retreats because I live in Austin and the weather got warmer. And I was like, oh, I should shout out to people on Facebook to do retreats. But then I went to like write the post, and again, when I talk about like, well, the businesswoman, like maybe it's my small self ego, but like there's women who would like write that post. They'd be like, I'm looking for blah, blah, blah. And like, I tried to like write it, and it didn't like come from my straw. It felt weird. It felt like awkward. I felt like cheesy and awkward when I was like reading what I wrote. I was like, this is not the way I want to ask for that. And I was like, oh, it's not coming out. So I haven't done it yet, but that's a really big, that was a piece of guidance. I didn't think of that. Some little voice like whispered, like, tell people that you're available to do retreats as a space holder and a medicine woman. Like, and I can keep it really simple, but my brain, my ego brain wants to make it complicated and do the things that we do, right? So this is my humanity, And
the embellishment, Yeah. When I do the embellishment part, yes.
Yeah, I'm like, should I make a new web page on my thing and then put the web page attached to the thing versus just like trust? Now that's the thing. That's where I'm not. Wow, I just called myself out on that. That's where I'm not trusting. You hear the whispers and then you act, and you don't overthink it. And that's a skill. And I think really that's a big surrender skill.
Yeah.
To not overthink and then just go and act, even if you don't think it's cooked or even if you're not sure what's going to happen, you know?
No, that's the moment you should act, because then the ego gets involved, and then you know, the higher self too is like, I don't want to do that. I didn't sign up for this. I myself saying like,
and I know these things.
I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah, and I know these things. I know them, and it's still 2 weeks ago I heard that, and I haven't done it yet. I'm going to do it right as soon as we get off the thing. I'll like do what they tell you, you know, like do what you feel, do what you hear, do what your heart is telling you, Ben. And maybe that's a beautiful thing to witness, is that sometimes our hearts tell us things that don't make logical sense.
No, it usually doesn't.
Us. Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I don't see that ever makes logic. You know, you are not going to find logic in your heart. There's a lot of incoherence. You should be comfortable with incoherence and coherence combined, because that's the union of who we are in this dimension. We are very coherent beings working with coherence. So that vibration, that's just trust. Trust that one day is going to clear up the way, and then yes, you work through your throat chakra, you verbalize it to exteriorize it, right? To make it through part of your reality. And then is when when you actually your third eye chakra opens up with the wisdom, you access to the wisdom throughout you, because you don't have it, but clearly you were doubting just a few hours before. But then you can actually see the beauty of it, and you can see the wisdom behind all that, let's say, healing or experience, the wholeness of the experience, because it's a whole package. But yeah, the heart chakra, it never makes sense. It's just, you gotta trust it. And I always mention that trust is trusting that by trusting, you will learn how to trust. Because that's really what the heart does into you. It just keeps showing you that just do it. Just do it.
Just do it. Exactly.
Just do it. And then you will see.
Totally
then you do it. Just do it. And then you start trusting more. And it's funny because as I do things, I don't trust. As I do things, I don't trust it, but I know that I will later. So I'm like in the moment, it's like, that's okay. I'm trusting. I'm learning how to trust, because then I will look back and I'm like, that was, I trust. But then I go back and then I find myself not trusting again, right? So I'm like, I still haven't learned how to trust, but I'm learning. I'm still learning.
I feel the same, honestly. I feel the same. And I think that really beautiful gift of teaching this surrender program is because I need it. I need to be in this conversation so that I can really, I feel like, so parts of me can gel and come together and come online so that I can hold more people, so that I can, because once that anchors within me, once I anchor into surrender and stop letting my ego kind of narrate or hold back, more can be given to you, because more can move through you, because you're clearer, you're allowing it to happen, and you have to get out of the way for that. You have to, and it's scary. It's so scary.
Yeah, for the ego, it's scary because we do want to know everything. We do want to plan it and protect ourselves from, basically, we are creating our reality, right? So from the devils, we are creating ourselves, basically.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that's so beautiful. Can you tell us more about this surrender program that you're offering?
Oh, well, it'll be for next year. So right now I have 8 very beautiful multidimensional women in a container with me, doing it's basically like a priestess initiation path. All of these women, one of them's an acupuncturist, one of them's a registered nurse, right? So they're all healers, but they're way showers, but I think the beauty, one of them works with autistic children, one's an actress, it's like being able to, it's ironic. It's like I'm teaching what we just spoke about, what we need to learn is that deep trust in the multidimensional realm. So just being in a sisterhood circle, like women's circles themselves, is enough sometimes, because when women gather with this intention of prayer and self-mastery and self-discovery, oh, hold on. Hold on, I'm going to mute so I can cough. Hold on one second.
Don't worry.
I like unmuted it and like,
That's okay. I'm going to cut that part. Don't worry about that.
Well, there's part that I want to like, I think that's important because I think me choking has to do with these women never had the opportunity to gather with other women who were just like them.
You know what? We're not cutting anything. We're leaving it. Yes, we're transmutating those voices.
Yeah, it's
liberating the voices of their heart.
It's really true, because I would say half of them had been working with me one-on-one, and then I was launching this program. I just knew, and the beautiful part about the program is that I knew that my transmission was how to surrender to the divine, how to become instruments of healing and channel spirit and all of those things. And then when I actually started writing the program, I wrote it in a way where I heard maiden, mother, crone. And then the male form of that is stag like a deer, like the antler, stag, father, and sage, like a grandfather, medicine man, wise person. And so I wrote the program so that we're going from the maiden to the stag, to the mother, to the father, to the crone, to the sage. And we're dancing in an integrated way between the masculine and the feminine aspects of ourselves. There's a couple reasons for that. I've done a lot of polarity work in the last 2 years about there's a school under David Data, which is talking about feminine embodiment and masculine embodiment. And I feel like the wise woman archetype herself, like priestesses, are embodied in a way that they use both. You have to have a strong masculine and a strong feminine. And that's also why the priest was threatening to the common collective of the women who were more exalted in our culture. If you're in your maiden, or if you're in your mother, you can't be you can't be sexy if you're a mother, a little bit, but not super overtly, and you're super sexy if you're a maiden, but you have to be powerless in order to really attract a man. There's weird programs happening about femininity.
They're weird.
And for me, my archetypes to the feminine are Durga, the warrioress, or Diana, or the huntress, right? But if you're too much then you'll end up childless and without a husband and all these things. And these are real challenges that I've faced, because I can see who I am archetypally and I honor her. And I do want to have a husband, and I do want to have a family, and I do want to have I want to have all of it. And so I created a conversation and an initiation into other women's psyches that also want to be all of these things as well. And some of them do have family and do have children and do have these things. But these women, this temple space that I've created, that I'm calling the Surrender Program, is an initiation for women who are wise women, who are wanting to activate more of that wisdom, more trust themselves, trust their voices, trust their power, trust their sense of their own multidimensional connection. Some of them in this container need to trust their masculine more because they're so far over the feminine, and some of them are so in their masculine and they really need to lean more to the feminine. And I can see already with listening to what they're saying in the group is some people are really activated in certain ways around the feminine part. And some people are oh my God, I don't even know what we're going to do when we do the masculine stuff. So it's just beginning. I've just taught the first month, which is the maiden. And that's a 6-month container. And I also have 2 other programs. One of them is called Releasing the Witch Wound, which I do around Halloween and Samhain at the end of the year in the fall. And it teaches women to let go of the fear that they have about persecution for speaking their voice or singing. And the other one is mantra medicine. And that's using mantras, like really the Sanskrit mantras or the Kundalini yogic mantras for healing and as a way to explore the voice and their power. Yeah. And then I do the one-on-one work, which is like, the one-on-one work is so beautiful because it's so pure in the sense of deep. First, the first phase is the release of the deep of the programming and the conditioning, and then finding out what's really in the person without all those other voices. Mm-hmm. And then what they want to bring to the world and what they want to birth in this world. And then how do they feel? Remember we were talking about like the thresholds of comfort, mm-hmm. allowing them to expand those. So maybe if the person was like completely like doesn't want to like step out as a healer, and then maybe they do one workshop, and then maybe they do another thing where they hold space, or they do, and it just allows them to like, find what their service is so that they feel connected to the infinite and also to the world.
Mm-hmm. And you're thinking about doing a retreat in a couple of weeks, or you're available starting from a couple of weeks to do
I want to do in-person retreats. So I've wanted that for like many, many, many years. And it's so funny. I remember in my 20s being like, I'm 38 now. And so I remember like in my 20s.
High five.
Oh, you are? Okay, great. So cool. That's awesome. When is your birthday?
October 12th.
Oh, cool. That's right. You're Libra. So I'm almost exactly a month. I'm November 14th. So we're only a month apart. That's so great. It's so beautiful, right? So I remember wanting to do retreats. I have a very deep desire to go to Egypt and to sing with women in the pyramids and the temples, and maybe Machu Picchu, and like go to holy sites and do pilgrimages and do ceremony and just pray, in those spaces. And it's always like spirituality is such a long road when you're really on it, and you really don't know like where you're going to be or who you're going to be doing. I think when we're surrendered, we don't know that. I think those of us who are more driven, that's my missing piece. The people who are like really in the world and they're driven and they set goals and they achieve the goals. Like, I don't understand any of that, but I understand listening and like moving, and then like I understand like walking into it. But I want to do retreats because I think a lot of people in Austin hold space. I live around a lot of entrepreneurs, and I know that maybe those people are the people who would put together the retreat, are the people who are driven, they have goals, et cetera, but maybe they need a mystic to walk in and do meditation and drop everybody into their hearts and make people cry. People tend to, their hearts open and tears come, and I think my purpose is to sing and to hold that healing space, the temple space for people, and walk as if we have wings in this world is a big part of that transmission, to give people that sense of clarity and purpose and attunement to the spiritual realm, that the gateway through our hearts, and just bring them peace, and then I get to leave.
Because they were tired after they were
magic, and then I go, and then that feels really good. So that's what I'm calling in. I think as a next level for my business would be to be able to do that. This little gypsy way of being is like just create little temples and go and heal and then come back. Yeah. So
well, maybe you are part of the surrendering to the soul retreats once they start.
Okay. Yes, I'm totally welcome.
So far, I'm just starting with the little workshops. It just seems that that's the right way to do it, one step at a time, as I get the guidance, as I get confident too, and get the practice. Yeah. But definitely, I think it seems like it makes sense to have retreats that are called Surrendering to the Soul, right? With all the guests with all the guests from the podcast and
that'd be great.
From the workshops. So
call me.
Yes, of course. Okay, before we go,
do
you have a message for those women I think it's pretty straightforward that we're going to call this episode Multidimensional Woman. It keeps coming through on me while we're talking. And do you have a message for them? Do you have a message for that woman? I'm going to describe myself maybe 5 years ago, 4 years ago. Hearing those voices, trust, learning how honor them, honoring them. It's the way to go, right? And because you see it, as soon as you honor that inner voice, the universe shows you right away that that's the right way. That doesn't mean it's gonna keep happening, because you need to build the trust, right? But it will give you a big chunk of truth at the moment. So you are like, okay, I'm not gonna keep losing. This was a good call to hear. But then you are gonna then that synchronicity disappears, because it's time to you to build that within you, right? So you're expecting more, and then the universe is like, no, wait, hold on, keep trusting, keep manifesting, keep working yourself, keep finding that inner voice, instead of like, oh, I'm just gonna put out there things. The universe keeps doing that, but you are still not realizing you're multidimensional, because you are still so attached to what you think you are, right? In my case, I was a mom already. My son was a baby. I was becoming a single mom at the moment as I was going through this, and I'm like, wow, if I disappear, if I go to a trip, if I go into the spiritual realms and I don't go back, what's going to happen to my son, right? That's the ego trying to control and thinking that, like we are so necessary to each other. That changed later on when I started seeing my son as my journey companion. But in that process, I know many women would love to hear your advice. When you are like, is this true? Or no, I'm making it up, but it feels really true. But you are like, but there's so many things that you feel attached to. In my case, was my son, or will be a business or a relationship, or etc.
Yeah, so I'm gonna teach something that Ram Dass taught me, because he's like one of my biggest teachers. He's the Jewish man who went to India and met Neem Karoli Baba. And he has a book called Be Here Now. And he's talk about, like, he actually is a spiritual teacher. Like, I get to be like we all, insight timer meditations, we're all like these little influencers nowadays. But homeboy, he knew what he was real. He was the real deal. And so I can't believe I just called Ram Dass homeboy, but I'm sure he's fine with it. Okay. So there's a couple layers that I want to speak to. And one of them is that thing that I heard when you first started talking, and it's about gelling the priestess archetype with the mother role. Now, I'm going to zoom out for a moment. Human culture, the parts of us that see, the parts that create attachment in the world, something I worked on with a client yesterday, which is the false self. It's a Jungian principle. Like Carl Jung, the psychologist, talks about that when we're human, sometime in toddler, when we're learning to interact in the world, we put on a persona or a mask or a false self. And then when we come into our power individuation, that later in life, we have to remove that false self. So these are roles, social roles, that we create constructs of how they're supposed to be. This is the attachment to the physical reality that we all have. Something that Ram Dass teaches, which landed with me at a very young age, because I see so high up astral dimensionally, like I have an exquisite, I like see people's past lives. I see their archetypal energies. I compare people to goddesses. I'm really tapped into the astral. That's another plane of consciousness. So we have the social roles that all exist, our ego, etc. And then we have a different plane of consciousness, which is the soul. And you said it, you did it a little bit, because you said that changed when I saw my son as a journey companion. So your son is a soul. Your husband, I don't know if you have a husband, but is a soul. Your mother is a soul. And everything's like, I use the word attune a lot. And Ram Dass kind of taught me this, is like, the teaching is attunement. So where is your dial tuned? Is your dial tuned to, I have to perform the role of mother and I have to show up in this construct? Or is your dial tuned to, hello, soul being that is my son, that happens to be my son? I'm going to be present with you. Hello, person that I'm working with that you happen to be my client, but you're a soul. And you're a soul, we're going to go even bigger. You're a soul who has their own spiritual ancestry, their own guides, their own angel. You have a whole invisible team of people who you work with that nudged you to call me to have this moment, right? Like that's
for sure.
Yeah, you have all the, right. So that's the multidimensional energy that you can listen to, that you can attune with, that you can call in more to your life, is that we are all human beings. We all are. That's the thing, is what do you give weight to? What do you take more seriously? Do you feel that the soul plane is more real and all of the other things that we're doing are guises that we're putting on, different hats? I'm a businesswoman, I'm a shaman, I'm a this, I'm a that, whatever, but I'm a soul who's on a journey. And can I be paying attention to your soul? And that creates deeper intimacy and deeper connection. Anything else that I've ever seen. And I think that's also why when we talked at the very beginning of the conversation about like the superficiality of Instagram and the way that spirituality is taught nowadays, there's a depth of intimacy, and why I love my work overlapping with the masculine and feminine and the tantric way of being. There's an intimacy of the soul and the psyche. So the psychology is the study of the psyche. So the psyche has archetypes and is attuned to a collective consciousness. All of these are realms of energetics. And if we are more tapped into that, and that is our front and center focus, then all of those things that we operate in, the constructs that we operate in, they're small potatoes. We do it so that we can interact. But what we're talking about really is like, it's soul and ego. It's human incarnation. It's like, how do we bring into our small minds what's really happening here on earth, which is we're all these beautiful beings with many, many lives and much, much programming in our samskars, trying to work out our karma with each other and do all of these things in these little boxes in a society that tells us we can only be a certain way. And the way to embody our multidimensionality is to listen to, I guess, really, it's like the silence, what's not being said, the vibration, the energy, the transmission. That's why I work with the bowls and do the sound healing. It's because that speaks without speaking, And if we're more there, then the rest just kind of. But when I personally, I'll just like reveal this, when I get it like too much Instagram, too much programming, I lose. I lose that part. And this is what I must keep coming back to. And then I must bring that into that Instagram world, because that's how I reach the people who need the healing and are here. But I have to recalibrate to my true alignment. My true alignment is when I'm anchored into the earth. I'm receiving the energy from the earth. I'm open to my guides and my angels. I'm receiving my energy from them. I'm in my heart. And then I can walk as if I have wings in this world, like a true priestess, shaman, healer, warrior, wise woman. And I don't plug in so much to the demands of those other constructs in reality, because I'm here. My vertical axis is clean.
Beautiful message. And it's so true. And it's so true. I know it's difficult to live that life, to create that balance. It's a lot of a challenge, but like everything, we'll keep learning, right? We're here for learning. And I find myself judging myself sometimes myself. I find myself judging sometimes. It's like, oh, maybe I should have cooked a better meal, or maybe I shouldn't buy outside, or maybe I should have eat, when sometimes I don't eat it the whole day because I'm doing other things. Little things, better little. But then I come back to the wholeness, right? To the whole picture. Exactly. I come back to the whole picture, and it's like, well, I'm learning. This is a lot. Like, not even 2 years ago, I was into this room, like I wouldn't even dream about doing a podcast called Surrendering to the Soul. I would have laughed, So it's like, wow, we're learning as it goes. So just, I just want to add to that beautiful message to those women that they are diving and, experimenting with their multidimensionality, that balance will come. Because I do feel balance quite often now. I do feel it. I lose it, yes, constantly. But the more I lose it, and the more I stop controlling, I don't want to lose it. It's just, no, it's part of navigating this experience. 100%. It's part of letting it go and trusting that I know that it will come back at the right moment. When I need to listen, when I need to be connected, it will happen, regardless of what it's externally occurring at the moment.
I also think sometimes that it's a setup. So I have a joke that I forget. So I think part of our growth, and I noticed this when like the ascension waves come in. So some people may be familiar with this, some people may not, but there was this trend on social media around like ascension symptoms. And there's big waves of energy when the wheel of the year turns, which is another part of what I teach in the surrender program, is the wheel of the year, which is like the spring equinox. Literally, I mean, there were pagan festivals, anchoring these points in the cycle of the year, the cycle of the seasons. And as the luminaries shift and the daylight gets stronger and not, the energy changes. Meaning sometimes our guides will shift, we'll get different guides in, our own energy changes. Sometimes a new moon cycle to the full moon 2 weeks, or sometimes a new moon cycle to another new moon that month is just nuts. And people's energy is just crazy and we lose our center. Now, I think that is actually on purpose. Mm-hmm. I feel like, and I think a part of the weird dance that the curriculum of our spiritual learning happens from chaos, collective energy, emotions bubbling up to the surface, real deep ancestral healing sometimes comes up in the collective for like many people at the same time, shakes us out of our center completely, and then reattunes to another vibration. And this is how growth happens. And so I think it would be great if during that time we could really go, oh, wow, this is like going to change and it's happening. But we don't. We're so immersed in the pattern that we're like, I'm losing everything. And then we're like, oh, it came back. And that's growth. And that's what they say when they say trust the process. It's almost impossible to do that chaos when we're going through it. It's almost impossible to remember our center, but it's true. We always come back to true alignment, and we do it in a way. Alison Gray said this once, it's spiraling up. We're constantly, this is ascension, this is soul growth. We're constantly learning how to go. It's the same lesson, but better. Same, but better. Better.
And faster. And faster.
That's true.
You find yourself healing something in the morning, and then at nighttime you're healing something totally like it's totally. Like, it's compiling the moment that you clear the space because you can feel it. It's like, this is over. Mm-hmm. This is part of history. Yeah. Then in that moment, you are up for the next. It could happen anytime. And if you control it, because I find myself saying, well, next week I'll start something else. I laugh with myself too, because it's like, that's cute. That's cute to say. Yeah, I don't get to control it. No. It's like few hours after doing really.
Yeah, it's on purpose. It's a weird. That's why the words Rasa Leela, the divine dance. It's a big play. That's what they say. It's a big play, and that's why they say not to take this reality too seriously.
Yes, yes. I think that's exactly what probably those women need to hear. Don't take this reality too seriously, because there's no it's not a reality. It's just a projection of what you are ready to experience. Like, your soul needs to experience this in the matter.
Totally.
Well, before we say goodbye, thank you so much, Michelle.
My honor. Thank you for allowing me to teach and speak. I'm really grateful.
In alignment, it was just meant to be. Even the timing, we started earlier. It was a misunderstanding.
It was perfect.
It was perfect. Before we go, would you delight us again with some music?
Yeah. Let me see if I can do a drum thing.
Ooh, I love drums.
Let's see. Can you hear this okay?
Yes.
Does it sound okay?
Yeah. Maybe move the microphone a little bit, maybe.
Closer?
I can hear it. No, closer. I could hear it, but I could hear
I'll just scooch.
Some echo.
My body, earth, my body, water, my blood, air, my breath, and fire. We all come from the goddess. We all come from the goddess. We all come from the goddess. And to her we shall return. And to her we shall return.
Ah.
So perfect! Yay! Celebrate!
It feels liberating to know that you're not the only one going through chaos, doesn't it? Many years ago, when I realized that I was living in a toxic environment, I checked on YouTube, hoping I could hear other stories. Do you know how many I found? I found none. So my intention with this podcast is that never happens to others again. Help me to spread the word that there is a huge light at the end of the tunnel for everyone. Hasta la próxima.